Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's quick review for Narcos Seasons 1 and 2. This video is a part of a series of videos where I give a quick spoiler-free review of a TV show currently airing. This video is where I review the first two seasons of the Netflix series Narcos. This video is spoiler-free and mostly intended for those who haven't seen the series, but those who have will know more of what I'm talking about. So Narcos is a show I've been planning on watching for a while, as everyone who's seen it can't stop talking about how good it is. That being said, the buzz around the show wasn't quite as big as some other Netflix shows like Jessica Jones, Stranger Things, or Black Mirror. However, I was mostly too busy to watch it, and by the time I got around to watching Season 1, Season 2 was coming out in a couple months, so I decided to wait until Season 2 was released to watch the two seasons together. So when I first decided to watch it, I had a somewhat busy day planned, so I thought I'd just watch one episode with lunch and save the rest for another day. However, I ended up watching the entire first season that day because after the first episode, I just couldn't stop. So I ended up doing nothing that day but staying up till 5 a.m. watching the entire first season. It is that good. And it didn't take me that long to get through Season 2 either. So this is in contrast to some other Netflix shows like Luke Cage, Orange is the New Black, and House of Cards. Although all good shows, I find it somewhat of a chore to get through as I watch it gradually over the course of a few weeks or month. Whereas with Narcos, I couldn't get through it quick enough. So I found Narcos to be a really well-constructed story, excellent at getting you hooked and keeping you engaged. I know the word cinematic gets thrown around a lot, particularly where Netflix shows are concerned. However, I think it really applies to Narcos even more than most shows, as it did really feel like I was watching one 10-hour movie split up into 10 parts. Narcos will appeal to those of crime dramas, particularly those that focus on crime lords as the main anti-hero, in the vein of shows like Boardwalk Empire and Breaking Bad, and films like Scarface. Narcos tells the story of Pablo Escobar, known as one of the most infamous and powerful drug runners in history, as he ran an empire in Colombia based on selling cocaine, and at one point was the richest man in the world. Narcos tells the story of his rise to power and focuses on the effort to take him down. And while many who praise the show tend to focus on Pablo Escobar, whose portrayal in the show is nothing short of amazing, as it is absolutely captivating and a great performance as well, I personally believe most people sell short the other characters in the series as well, who I believe were just as good, particularly the DEA agents, whom the show takes the point of view of. The show is narrated by DEA agent Steve Murphy, and I actually think these voiceover narrations were excellent and really added to the series, and I personally believe they are undersold by most other reviewers, as I found them necessary to understanding the overall story, and it actually added a lot to it and kept me more engaged. The great thing about Narcos is that although you clearly identified more with the DEA agents and were rooting for them to win, so to speak, the show did a great job at humanizing all of the characters in the show, even the despicable ones. As much as the show made you hate Pablo Escobar and his cohorts, it also made you sympathize with him to some degree, as they portrayed him as a loving father and a family man. Likewise, with the DEA agents and other Colombian law enforcement working to take down these criminals and despicable men, they could show the darker side of them as well, as no one in the show would come off as purely good or purely evil, and that complex dynamic storytelling is one of the things that made this show really great. A lot of people, I think, also undersell Pedro Pascal's performance in this show, who is of course best known by Game of Thrones fans for his portrayal of Oberyn Martell. While his performance here is not as charismatic or memorable as his take on the Red Viper of Dorne, I still think he adds a lot to the show with his performance as DEA agent Javier Pena, who is introduced as more of a shady and morally ambiguous of the good guys, and he does indeed become someone you can empathize with and who you want to see succeed. So unlike shows like Breaking Bad and films like Scarface, the show expands upon simply showing you the crime boss's perspective to also include the perspective of the law enforcement chasing after him, and likewise is not a typical cop show as it humanizes the criminals that they are trying to catch. And overall, the show does an amazing job at showing all the interpolitics at play on both sides of the law. A common complaint of the show is that for non-Spanish speaking audience, the majority of the show is subtitled, which may be a big turnoff for some as they are forced to read most of the dialogue being spoken. But I myself love that they do it this way. There are some shows that have them all speak English even though it takes place in a non-English speaking country, and some shows like Vikings does what is known as the Hunt for Red October switch, where it begins with the characters speaking their native language with subtitles but then switches to English so the audience is aware that they are only speaking English for the audience's sake and in story are meant to be speaking their own language. And personally, I think it's very brave for this show to not do either of these things and instead keep it all in Spanish, as I think it really adds a feeling of authenticity that you would lose by trying to placate to English-speaking audiences. And I feel it's particularly important to this show, which is based in Colombia and where Colombian culture plays a really important factor. Watching seasons 1 and 2 together was an interesting choice, as the two kind of blend together as they both seem to be telling one story rather than having separate feels to them like most shows do with different seasons. But to be clear, I think this is an absolutely good thing and a rare thing that two seasons could flow so well into one another. Although they are slightly different in retrospect, as season 1 takes place over a much longer time frame, so season 2 in comparison can seem a lot more slow-paced, but story-wise I feel the two work perfectly together, and I feel like one story is being told rather than a fragmented one. So my rating for Narcos Seasons 1 and 2 out of 10 is a 9. Excellent. An amazingly engaging show that tells a complex story of some of the most murderous and horrendous drug lords in history, but does so in a realistic way that doesn't paint anyone as a two-dimensional hero or villain, and it manages to remain engaging throughout. So as for the question of will I watch the next season, the answer is most definitely yes, although there has been some speculation on whether or not there will be a next season, as season 2 seemed to end in somewhat of a good stopping point for the series, but it has been confirmed that there will be at least 2 more seasons of the show. I personally can see how the show could go, and I think it's going to be just as engaging to watch as ever. So that's it for my review of Narcos Seasons 1 and 2. Please be sure to check out my channel for more quick reviews to come, as well as many more reviews on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Humans, The Walking Dead, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.